Tulsi Gabbard left off. It's where we begin today with some of our favorite experts and friends. Former CIA director and our senior national security and intelligence analyst, John Brennan's here. Also joining us, former DHS chief of staff during Donald Trump's first term, Miles Taylor's here. And rounding out our esteemed panel, political analyst, host of the Bulwark podcast, Tim Miller's here. Tim, I'm going to start with you because there's nothing for an intelligence person to say about this person. This is a political hack, and he's now the DNI. What happens next?
You're correct. I mean, he's the most, this is a person, there's never been somebody with this little experience being nominated for a cabinet level job in the history of the Republic, honestly. And that includes the Secretary of War that was a former weekend talk show host, right? I mean, at least Pete Hegseth was in the military. Bill Pulte has no experience about this at all. Calling him a political hack is even, kind of too kind to him. I mean,
it's like mean to us political hacks.
Yeah, right. And he was a corrupt grifter. He didn't really have any skills in politics. He really didn't demonstrate any skills in politics besides sucking up to Donald Trump. I mean, among the other things he was doing was, if you remember during the pandemic, the kind of meme stock push where people were pushing up random stocks like GameStop that had no value and running up their stock number, and then there'd be a rug pull, and the big investors would make money and the regular investors would lose their shirt. That was Bill Pulte was one of the people that was involved in that. He's done the same thing with crypto rug pulls, promoting worthless. I don't know if I can say the word S coins, and having people invest in these worthless coins, and where he makes money and his friends make money and regular people lose their money, and then at the Federal Housing Agency, the main thing he did was use his access to mortgage documents. He also made himself the head of Freddie and Fannie to go after Trump's political foes. And that's like the extent of his political work, actually, going after political foes with dubious attacks based on the way that they filed their mortgage documents. So like that is this guy's track record. And that's why he's been chosen to run DNI, because he showed that he would do what Trump wants, which is use the power of the government to go after political foes and try to find things about them that can, cause them problems. And the good news about this is that Lisa Cook and Tish James are still unfazed, and Adam Schiff by, his efforts to dig through their mortgage documents and make sure they dotted the I's and crossed their T's. But hopefully he'll be that ineffective at DNI. But I don't think that, I don't think that he's in this job to actually do the job of the Director of National Intelligence. Not only does he not have intelligence, I don't think that he's brought in there to do that. I think that Marco Rubio and, the other people in Donald Trump's national security team will continue to do that work. I think he's in there to do the dirty work, to do this sole job of now using his expanded access to the information about Americans to try to go after Donald Trump's political foes. I think that will be basically his only duty there. And he's going to have 210 days to do it, because that's the length that you can be in acting cabinet level, in an acting cabinet level position, barring some intervention from Republicans in the Senate, which I don't expect.
Well, Director Brennan, we already heard the threshold for Thune and Cornyn to intervene. They're talking about, Thune says, quote, he'll have to go through a confirmation process. No, he won't. Ms. Tim just said he has 210 days to be there as an acting. I don't imagine they'll put him up and put him through a confirmation process. Donald Trump can have him do whatever he wants him to do in an acting capacity without being vetted, without